guys, welcome to Tiffindale Rescue Realtors. I am bringing us in today, so...
That is so weird and strange because, hey, but I think she did a good job.
Yay, I'm being promoted.
Oh, yeah, well, you'll have to close us out because I forget all that stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. You bring us in and I close us out. So now you have to close us out.
Hey, yeah, good luck. You'll have to help me. But you know what? Today, we're going to talk about something that's kind of important. It's kind of dated information. But if you don't know, on February 1st, Realtor folks, we have
contract changes.
Mandatory contract changes. So if you are still using the old contract out of Transaction Desk, some of the other ones, you might want to change it because you're opening yourself up to some problems.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that it's one of those things that we're kind of going to discuss the importance of knowing when these changes come into play.
Yes.
And who's responsible for letting you know, kinds of things like that. So I guess we'll start with that. So whenever we have changes like this, Dale, I'm gonna interview Dale this week since he interviewed me last week. So when changes like this come into play, whose responsibility is it to notify the agent of these changes?
Well, that's a really good question.
I think so.
The answer is it's more complicated than just simple. Whose responsibility is it to know about contract changes that are coming into place? My first answer is the agents.
Yes.
That is part of your business. We get tons of emails. We get lots of leeway. We get all kinds of information. So when you see that stuff come in your email, you might pay a little bit of attention to it. But to back that up, I can go all the way from, well, it's Trek's responsibility to let us know. Then it's TAR's responsibility to let us know. Then it's your board's responsibility. Then it's your broker's responsibility. But I sort of think that's kind of like almost in reverse order. First and foremost, you are a professional real estate agent. You need to pay attention to this kind of stuff.
And if you really think about it, and we're not really broad enough to have listeners from outside the state, so this is a Texas contract change. But I do think that it's something to really consider, that I don't know how you don't know about it either, because if you're involved in the community or you're involved with any kind of groups on Facebook or anything, which you should be, you know about it because title companies are also letting you know, because title companies are doing classes prior to the changes going into effect so that you know what's happening. And so that's something to be considered as well. I mean, the Women's Council of Realtors, that we did a class for it. So it's really hard for me to say, I don't know how there are agents that don't know that there are contract changes.
I could say why.
But they do. There are agents that don't know. So
many.
Be nice, though. No.
And it is. I mean, everyone works together to get this out there, and then we just have to be, as a business owner agent, you have to be responsible for taking care of yourself and not exposing you, your brokerage, or anyone else to liability and lawsuits over things that have changed.
Yes, and it's part of your job as, we talk about this all the time, like remaining competent and having competency in the field and in the industry is to know what exactly is changing. You stay on top of interest rates, you stay on top of, how the market's moving, and this is one of those things that is also part of it. And I'm going to be the first one to admit, paperwork is my least favorite part of this job.
Always.
I don't think there's anybody that, barring a transaction coordinator, that's like, I love paperwork. There are some people, there's the type A people that really just like to do it, but it's a necessary evil for me. But our job is to know the contracts, because our job is to protect our client. So
I'll ask a really big question and no answer, then we'll move on.
No, I'm the interviewer.
Yeah, you're the interviewer. I'm still asking a question, but you've been talking for a long time. I'm going to teach you how to interview someone.
Oh, let's go back and watch last week's episode.
I did. Oh my gosh!
You told a lot of stories.
I really subscribed on the what you call that thing, the podcast, and I popped up on my car screen. It was so cool.
Dale's really impressed that we have photos that pop up because I've been doing cute little graphics.
It was so amazing. Now how many agents have not read the contract? Oh wait, that's not what you asked. How many agents don't know that we have a new contract? I pose it a different way. How many agents have not read the contract? Not the new contract.
The contract
The
in
contracts
general?
they've been filling out. Yeah.
Well, do you know that answer?
I do not, but I promise you it's a lot.
I am curious to know, because we talked about this, and I have these little notes because I did go to a class on it prior to it, the changes going to effect. And I have the notes from the title company, and I joked, I was like, I don't really need to go to the class to actually like hear about the changes. I just really need their notes and what they provide with the highlighted sections of what has changed. Because if I just see it all in black and white and reading the whole thing, I'm not going to really recognize, I'll know it at that point, but it's easier for me just to go in and go, okay, this has changed, so I need to know this part. But I like that they do these little outlines for me because it makes my life easier.
And that still didn't answer my question.
No, but that's an answer that nobody knows the answer to.
More than you will ever imagine, let's just put it that way. So if you've never read the contract, and I mean from paragraph to paragraph to paragraph, go read it. It will really help your business.
I think you need to do that with your buyer reps and your listing agreements as well.
Absolutely. All
Really
contracts.
anything in the contract I think you need to actually read.
You don't have to be able to quote it verbatim, but you really need to know what it says. So let's talk about one of the big
Here we go, guys.
changes.
Going into some of the changes.
And the other thing, when you go to classes and you learn about some of these things, some of the things may or may not
I'll
be
say it.
taught
I'll say it.
correctly.
You want me to say it? Can I say it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so here's the thing. When you do go to these classes, and this is why I kind of just like getting the notes, like so I can read it myself, you get the answers on the changes from a lawyer in a lot of times. And we talked about the fact that they're very black and white a lot of times, but real estate lives in the gray area. And there's things that I feel like aren't acknowledged or remembered when these changes go into effect that kind of convoluted a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about this one right here. The first one,
Go for it.
first page, under where we put the sales price and all that kind of stuff, there's a new little line. You know how you put the down payment, the loan amount, and the total amount you're offering? They now say the cash portion of the sales price does not include proceeds from borrowing or selling other real property. So one class said, well, that means if you have a contingency, that money you're getting out of there can't be disclosed, it can't be used unless you disclose it in the contract. That's the last part. So in my opinion, because I am not a lawyer, I am not a judge, if you have a contingency and you fill out a contingency addenda, that's disclosed in the contract. So if you're
Because
getting,
an addendum is part of the contract.
unlike an amendment, that's a whole nother story.
Yes. And that's something that going back to like contracts 101, like there's a lot of people that think contract, they just think it's the 10 pages of the 1 to 4, and it's not. The addendums are also part of the contract. So throwing that one out there.
Okay.
Okay, your turn, go.
Oh, that's all right. So everything has to be disclosed in the contract. If they don't have all of their money, a contingency is disclosed by the contingency addenda. There is no borrowing addenda from your parents or whatever. Not sure what the best solution is for that because you're going to have to ask your broker.
Well, and so if we really go into this a little bit more in depth, it says does not include proceeds from borrowing of any kind. So really, I mean, that's kind of against your third party anyway, because you're not really supposed to have any undisclosed like little side borrowing. So your gifts from your parents, if your parents are giving you gift, does that count? Because you're not borrowing it. It's a gift. So there's a question for you there.
Correct.
Because that, again, is where we kind of get into the gray area.
And that's kind of a gray area, but
Because
I think the intent on this, and sometimes we miss what the intent was in
kind of
the
like the
reality
clear
world.
cooperation rule.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother one. I'm not sure that this doesn't mean borrowing like you're doing a cash out refinance or something
Okay.
like that, as well as that. I don't think they thought everything through. So you're going to have to go to your broker for some guidance. I think this is one of those things they'll look at again and maybe clarify the language next go around.
Yeah.
But
But until then, we're in limbo. On
be careful. Be careful what you do. Not going to be a killer either way. What's the next one that was big?
So the next big one is the part on the warranties. So in regards to repairs and warranties is another one that's kind of a polarizing. People are trying to infer it a little bit differently, and you have different definitions of how it's supposed to be interpreted. And this has actually been added for paragraph 7F, which if you know the contract, paragraph 7F is in regards to whenever we do a repair amendment, it talks about the fact that the contractors that do the repairs need to be licensed or do that for a living type thing, because there's not always licenses for some trades. But what has been added is that the seller shall complete agreed repairs and treatments prior to the closing date. So that was already there. And they have to obtain any required permits. So they actually have to get the permits for it. So if it's something that,
The biggest one in that world is, let's say you're going to replace your hot water heater. Technically, in most cities, hot water heaters require a permit. This says that your seller is going to get a permit to do that. Even if they use a very skilled handyman that does that in his normal line of work and doesn't pull permits, supposed to have a permit. They'll have a gripe in the contract.
Yes. And then, obviously the same thing. The repairs and treatments must be performed by persons of license, blah, 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 blah. We already talked about that. But the new portion, that is kind of where people are getting hung up, seller shall provide buyer with any copies of documentation from the repair persons showing the scope of work and payment for the work. So that's something that the buyer's agent was traditionally, they had to go and go, I need the repairs, the lender's requiring it, yada, yada, yada. This is actually required now. So sellers agents, be prepared. When these are done, you need to go ahead and just send those over. And then here's the big one. At the seller's expense, arrange for the transfer of, they took out at buyer's election, so they have to do it. So of any transferable warranties at closing. So here's where I've seen some discrepancies in this one. Different people have said different things. So when you hear any transferable warranties, does that mean anything that's warranted on the work that you did during this time? Or does that mean any transferable warranties that are already existing on the property, inherited or otherwise?
Yeah, and that answer is not clear. And the biggest example I think of this would be like, I go buy a house and I know I'm going to have to get some foundation work done, and I move in, I get my foundation repaired, and then I sell it 2 years later. And it has a transferable lifetime warranty. Well, this to me says you, seller, have to pay any fees affiliated with that transfer. That's pretty clear.
Right.
But the question comes up with, if you're going to get the repair done at the time of closing, then the warranty wouldn't really have to transfer, probably.
Because you could already just put it in their name.
Correct, because it would be directly to them.
But the bigger question is, if I was selling a house and you bought a house from me 2 years ago, and the warranty was transferred to you from the foundation work that I did on the home.
Correct.
Do you now... You inherited that transferable warranty. Do you also have to pay the transfer fees from that warranty to the new buyer?
Okay, so
that's the bigger question.
I bought a house, from Tiffany, and she had foundation work done. I got the warranty transferred to me. Then I sold that house. Do I have to pay the transfer of the warranty to the third buyer down the road? And I don't necessarily think that's clear in the contract. I would assume, in my opinion as a broker, would be, yeah, probably so.
Yeah, because it says any.
Correct.
And that's where I've been seeing people posing this question and receiving different answers. And that's where it gets murky and it gets a little bit unclear, because it's not, to me, and I'm in the same boat as you, I see any, and I think existing, inherited, any transferable warranties, they have to be paid for by the seller. That's the way that I interpret it. But I've been seeing other people that have actually heard from lawyers that no, it's only ones that have been done.
Tiffany's really picking on lawyers right
I'm picking on
now.
lawyers right now, but it's because we're getting different interpretations, and that's where it gets a little bit difficult. And so, I think here's my opinion on it, and I know yours is exactly the same. CYA, and just assume it's all transferable warranties, inherited or otherwise. That's my opinion of it, because I'd rather be overcautious than under.
Special provisions. Try not to write in it unless you have an attorney do it.
Blah, blah, blah. That one's basically the same. Oh, that's the escrow officer.
Yes, by the way, your closing officer at your title company, they are now like official. They have a real title, and they are escrow agent with a capital E.
Which means they are a defined term in the contract. They are now a noun.
Okay, this is a really, really big one. It doesn't change a whole lot, but it does a little bit. Paragraph 21 in the contract is notices. Mm-hmm. And notices are there for a reason. Not necessarily even before you close, but post-closing. And it asks you to put your buyer's address, phone number, and email. They still have fax in here too, which I find to be hilarious. But it is a paragraph that is so often skipped by agents in this thing.
It's a paragraph that's skipped, and it's a paragraph that also, there's agents that instead of putting their buyer's information, they always put their own.
I'm going to teach you how to interview someone in a minute.
Okay, I'm sorry. But you're talking. How am I supposed to interview when you won't stop talking?
Let's go measure the time that we've talked about these today.
Go. Just continue.
And a lot of times agents put their own name in there, and they do. And now we have our own spot, which is good. That does not negate the really necessity of putting how to contact your buyer.
You should always put your client's info in.
You should, and believe me, I mean, I'm real world too. I don't always do it.
Yeah.
But it's really important.
Well, and from what because I remember a class from eons ago when I first started, and they mentioned there are a lot of agents that put their information in there, but then it's on you to actually get them their information.
That is correct.
So by putting their information in there, they're actually going to get the information. But I really like that there is a line for us, because how many times have we had clients that have gotten something from the title company or gotten something from the lender, and they ask us about it, and we don't even know because we don't have a copy. We're not privy to the information. So that kind of helps sometimes where, yes, the title company did request your information or request you to fill out this or XYZ. So, which the title companies I work with have always kind of CC'd me on it anyway, but it's nice to have it in there, so.
Yeah. And really the other big change, there's several other little ones.
Yeah, this one's
This one's on the third party financing addenda. You know, we got the conventional. You know, we got FHA, Texas Vet, VA, I'm forgetting one, reverse mortgage purchase,
etc.
Yeah, and they've added yet another one called other financing.
This one gets a little bit.
So it certainly applies to people writing investment properties using what we call a hard money lender. That says you need to disclose that you are getting a loan, because most people write those up like they're cash.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes back to, okay, I'm going to pose it as a question.
Go for it.
So, this is part of the contract. It allows you, does it allow you now to put cash on paragraph 3, or do you need to put that in the financing portion?
Well,
so there's your question on how to fill out the contract.
I think I know the answer to this one, like pretty definite. Most hard money loans are high interest, short term, et cetera, for an investment property to go in, fix and flip, whatever. Technically, normally, not always, depending on the lender, you could put 0 down. Mm-hmm. Your loan amount is whatever the purchase price is, and your financed amount is whatever the purchase price is. And then you fill out the third-party financing addendum, and there you have it.
Okay, so that's, instead of going in for an investment and doing like we used to do, where Dale's talking about you treated it as cash and you're writing a cash offer. So now you would put 0 for the cash and put the financing as the total amount.
Correct. That's the way, as a broker answering you, that's what I would tell you.
Okay.
Real world, who knows what's going to happen?
It's probably going to be done both ways.
Contracts are only as good as the paper. This is Dale's real world opinion.
Oh, agreed.
Contracts are only as good as the paper they're written on until there's a problem.
Yes. And sometimes even when there's a problem.
Absolutely. So we need to be very diligent about that. We need to keep ourselves and our brokerages protected. We need to keep our clients protected by knowing what's in here. And we need to work together. If there's a problem or a mistake or a blank that was filled in wrong, have some grace, guys.
Yeah.
Have some
and
grace.
Oh my God, work with the other agent. We do have a new contract out. If you see, oh, I think they filled this out wrong, be like, hey, did you mean to do this? I know there's a new contract. There's some new, just don't be jerks to each other. We're all working towards the same goal and trying to get to the same finish line of closing the deal. And when you start to try and bully the other agent, you're not really doing your job of taking care of your client if you bully the other agent and they end up backing out. So that's true.
I mean, there are reasons to back out of contracts, but you know what? Agent shouldn't be one of them.
That should definitely not be one of them. Do not make yourself a factor in this. You should be here to help, not to make it worse.
Absolutely.
So,
and those are the big changes in the contract. There's a lot more.
There's a couple more.
A couple of little addenda changes and things like that. But my suggestion to you is just go read your contract.
Read your contract. Or if you really want something like the highlighted notes of this, contact your title company. They probably have it.
Absolutely. And contracts will change. They always do. Everything changes in real estate.
Oh, you forgot about that one.
Yeah. How many of you do seller financing? There's some big changes in the seller financing addendum.
But not a lot of people do seller
financing. But
financing.
not a lot. So,
and most people that do it know it. So.
Yep. So, you know what? I think we're done on this today.
I think
so. The bottom line, read your contract, know the changes, be professional, and if you have a question, just ask somebody.
Yes.
First and foremost, that would be your broker.
Yes, and if your broker doesn't answer, you can always contact the lawyers at the title company.
And first and foremost, ask your broker. And let your broker do the ask at the title company if need be, because they're the ones that are on the hook for anything you're doing as an agent.
Truth.
And you need to be careful. So be careful, have fun, go practice real estate, and
use the new contract.
Oh, if I have an agent that receives a contract on an old contract, we are now making them send them back.
And rewrite it.
And rewrite it as of February 1st, 2023. The new contract must be used. Period. And because the market's picking up and all that, you know what? You might lose out on another offer because you didn't do your job as a buyer rep.
Dale's on a tangent today.
I am. Sign us off. I'm done.
Go ahead, guys. Like,
hey, you guys have a great
follow.
week.
Dale finally subscribed to our own podcast.
I did.
Isn't that nice? But yeah, I think that we've been really on topic and really hitting some really good stuff. And I've gone back and listened to a couple of our shows. So please go back and listen to the ones that we already have. I think that the Marketing 2.0 one is really good. And I think that our open houses one is really good. So the open houses one, the audio kind of sucks on it because I was playing with the mic. So just bear with me on that one. But it is good content. So go back, listen to the things that we have, subscribe to our channels, like us, follow us, blah, 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 blah. Love you guys. Hope you have a good weekend. And we will see you guys later. Bye.